Your friend reaches out to you and says, hey, look, I haven't been feeling very well. I want to look out for a counselor. I'd like to talk to somebody. What kind of a counselor should I find? What are some things that I should look for in a counselor and a therapist and a psychologist? That's what we're going to be talking today. Folks, welcome. If you don't know me, my name is Daniel, standing for Daniel Teaches. I'm the psychology student bringing you his 2 cents from his lectures, textbooks, YouTubes, podcasts. I pay the big bucks so you don't have to. So look, today we're going to find how to find a therapist. Now, many people sitting there going, Daniel, it's easy. You go to Google and you type in therapist near me. You find the cheapest one, you go after that. Look, it's not wrong necessarily, but here's an important aspect to take note of. The number one thing that leads to a better outcome, regardless of what sort of a philosophical approach or theoretical approach the therapist has, be it humanistic, be it unconscious, behavioral, it's this. It is all determined, or majority of it is determined, by the relationship between the therapist and the client. So if someone says, look, I went to therapy and it didn't work out, it's not so much as, oh, therapy doesn't work. It's just, you're not a good fit for that person. Or that therapist wasn't a great fit for you. As we know, just like in any occupation, different people will bring their personalities to the job. All bus drivers are not the same. All police officers are not the same. All professors are not the same. They have different styles of teaching, different styles of talking, different levels of patience, different styles of explaining things. Some will let you talk more. Some will interrupt you more. And this is one thing that you're going to find when you go out looking for a therapist is people have their own style. So the question becomes, Daniel, how do I find a therapist that's right for me? There's a couple of things I want you to keep in mind, whether you're thinking about yourself, a friend, a loved one, whoever. If they're looking for a counselor or a therapist, this is what I want you to think about. The first thing that you're going to do when you start looking for a counselor or a therapist or someone in your area is you begin to look for specializations. Now, most counselors or therapists or psychologists, they'll have a general knowledge of almost everything, like surface level, but they will specialize in something. Let's say Sarah blah, blah, blah has a general knowledge of everything, but she specializes in anxiety in young girls. Okay, young girls, what does that mean? Let's say between the ages of 12 to 18. Okay, that's her specialty. What does that mean? That means she has more education in that area, she has more experience in that area, and she's had more clients in that area. So if you're looking for someone to help your niece who's really anxious, you'd be better off taking your friend to her as opposed to someone else who just does it generally and then specializes in a different field. So number one thing that you can find either by looking at a website or something like Psychology Today is, what do you specialize in? And that's a big one. And if you can't see, give them a call. Hey, what is your education in? So number one thing is, what have they specialized in? Number two, take a look at their education. This is really, really important. Living in Canada, I can tell you this. In order to be a counselor, now, let's just go over the word lingo for a second. If I say counselor, generally speaking, you're going to have 6 years of education. 4 years of a bachelor's degree, followed by about 2 years of a master's degree, and then you can apply for a license to become a counselor. Counselors are generally, quote unquote, more normal problems. Normal problems would be things such as stress from school, anxiety from school, relationship problems, the marriage isn't going well, video game addiction. Those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. And then you have specializations, right? You have counselor for kids, school counselor, you've got a marriage counselor. So a really big one is, if you find out what a person specializes in, next look at their educational background. How much did they study? This is important because this is going to give you some knowledge of how much depth does this person have in their field. So if we're talking counselor, chances are it's 6 years. If we're talking about a psychologist, at least in Canada speaking, you have to have a PhD. So that means on top of 2 years master's degree, it's at least another 4 years for the PhD after that. So all in all, you're looking at about 10 years worth of education. Now, mind you, if you have a counselor, if you have a psychologist, generally speaking, psychologists charge more than a counselor would per hour. Why is this? Well, the reason is they have greater knowledge. They've studied for longer, so rightfully so, they go, look, if we're both open books, my book is a lot bigger. It has a lot more pages. I can offer you maybe more things that this person can't, therefore, I will charge you more. So number one was, what do you specialize in? Number two is, what is your educational background? And look, psychologists are more experienced at dealing with things that are a little bit more problematic, if you will. I mean, it's when anxiety is really, really in its worst place. Like social anxiety, you don't want to leave your home. Or if you can't get out of bed because you have depression. Now, what's important to realize is a lot of these ones overlap. So don't think I have to go to one and I can't go to the other. So counselors or psychologists, if you're talking about depression, eating disorder, anxiety, trauma, both of them can help. Okay, so those are the two to look out for right now. There's psychiatrists, but we're going to leave that for another day. So what do you specialize in? What is your educational background? Okay. Third one, you contact them and you say, "Dear so-and-so, my name is this. This is the situation that I'm in." Very brief summarization. Very brief. I'm dealing with it. This is the problem in my life right now. How many cases have you had dealing with this experience? I'm a guy who's dealing with burnout. I'm 35 years old and I hate my boss and I feel super anxious every time I go to work. I feel terrible. How many people have you worked with that have had similar experiences to me? And they might say 0. They might say 5. They might say 10. They might say, "I've had so many, I don't even remember the number anymore." The follow-up question, if they don't say 0, is, what was the outcome of the majority of those cases? Now, ethically speaking, they can't give you names. Yeah, you see that guy who works at the grocery store? I helped him, and I helped her, and I helped him. You can't say that. But they can say, "Look, I've worked with 10 people, give or take, and out of the 10, 8 of them, they showed much improved mental health behavior, and we were able to overcome their problem." So now you have an idea of what this person specializes in, their educational background. You know if they've had cases similar to yours and how they went. Or maybe you talk to someone, they're like, "Look, they come off as super great and wonderful, but it turns out they've never had a case like the one you're presenting them." For whatever reason, let's say you're talking about problems in your marriage, and this counselor's like, "Look, you'd be my first case." That doesn't mean it's automatically a no, but it's important to keep that in mind that there are counselors or there are psychologists out there who will have more experience in your particular case, who have tried and true and tested methods that have worked for other cases that they could replicate for yours. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. So everybody following me so far? Specialization, educational background. Have they dealt with cases that have been similar to yours? Those are 3. Number 4, what does a session look like? That's important to know. Is it going to be once a week? Is it twice a week? Is it once every 2 weeks? Bi-weekly? Is it once a month? How long are the sessions? 30 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour plus. And also, therapists have different styles. For example, you'll have some that'll lean back a little bit more, that'll let you talk, that'll be a little more neutral. And then you have some that are a little bit more assertive. They might be willing to give you more advice. Now you're sitting there going, "Daniel, that's ridiculous." Of course, they should all give advice. They do. But there's definitely some that'll sit back. Look, there's some people, the most that you'll get out of counseling is you'll have someone who will listen to you. And if you say things that are untrue, then they'll call you out on it. Or they'll challenge some ideas. Once they've built rapport with you, once they've built a relationship, so you don't get angry and leave, right? That's one way. Another way to look at it is, look, there's some people who will just straight up give you advice. You go, "Look, I'm in this situation. I've got no idea what to do." And they'll go, "Okay, option A is you could do this. Option B is you could do this. Option C, you could do this. Here are the pros and cons for this, for this, for this. What do you think about what I've just said?" And what you'll find is, again, different counselors have their own kind of idea on what they want to do. So that's therapist style. Number 5, if there's a cultural component, definitely take that into consideration. For example, let's say you're from the east part of the world. Let's say you're from the Middle East or you're from Asia. You come to the West. You want to talk to a counselor about a problem that you see as a problem, that your family sees as a problem because of where you're culturally from. But if you meet a counselor who's maybe insensitive to the cultural differences, which does happen, there could be a chance that they will dismiss your problem. For example, let's say worst case scenario, you're upset because your daughter won't wear a hijab. You come to the West, you start speaking to a counselor and they're a white person and they start saying, "Yeah, they shouldn't have to. It's a free country. There's no problem with that." So be careful. That doesn't mean that we're going to start segregating, meaning if you're a Muslim, you have to find a Muslim counselor. If you're queer, you have to find a queer counselor. Not necessarily. But it's important that whoever you talk to, you can kind of get a feel for, oh, they can take a step back and understand that even if it's not a problem in this culture, it's a problem to me because of that culture. And it's not right or wrong, but it's subjective. Okay? So that's another one. We've talked about educational background. We've talked about specialization. We've talked about have they had cases similar to yours. We've talked about the therapist style. We've talked about that cultural component. A big one is money. What does financing this look like? Many therapists, they have insurance, meaning you could use your insurance to pay. The question becomes, does your specific insurance cover it? Make sure you talk to them before doing so. And also, how much? What is the percentage? I've heard sometimes there are insurances that do not cover it, sometimes 25%, 50%, even up to 80%. So based on whatever their fee is, you can get an understanding of, okay, this is how much my insurance covers. Like, let's say, whatever, maybe it covers 1 session a month, 3 sessions a month, whatever, and then this is how much I have to pay out of pocket. So that's really important to know. Furthermore, a lot of counselors might do a sliding scale. So this is, they look at students and they look at people who maybe they don't have the biggest salary, and the cost of therapy or counseling to you will be adjusted based on your income. So they might say, look, if you make less than 40 grand a year, this is how much I'm going to charge you per hour. If you make between 60 and 70, this is how much. If you make between 70 and 80, this is how much. So it's kind of a considerate and very thoughtful way so that counseling and those therapy services aren't closed off to only the people who can pay $180 an hour. So those are some of the biggest things to look for. What's really important is if you just keep those in mind as you're looking for a counselor, as you're talking to people, it's a little bit like shopping. I mean, you're looking at different products. Look, if you wanted to hire a coach that was just right for you, or you wanted to do something that was, like, there's not one is the best out of all, right? It's a question of who fits in the best for what you're looking for. And it's super important to take in mind all the things that I've listed earlier, because those are components that are all going to impact the way that you interact with this person and your takeaways from these sessions. For example, you might have some therapists who, alongside helping people with anxiety, they're really big on meditation and mindfulness and looking at dreams and talking to you about your dreams. Like, that's a big avenue. You might find another counselor that is also focuses on working on anxiety. They'll never talk about meditation. That's not their thing. They'll never talk about mindfulness or about dreams. Like, that's not the area of specialty. So if you know yourself, you're a spiritual person, keep that in mind when reaching out for a therapist, you know. So those are really, really, really important. And especially going back to that one factor of asking a person, look, have you dealt with cases like mine? You have. Okay, how many and how did they go? And generally speaking, what did you guys end up doing together? Another common thing in therapy is they'll provide homework. They say, look, you're talking to your therapist about intrusive thoughts that you can't stop thinking about, that are negative, that are harmful. And they might say, look, I want you to have a pen and a piece of paper around you at all times, or use your phone as notes, and make a tick for every time you have this negative thought. And you do that over and over and over again. You come back to therapy, they say, well, how many ticks? Okay, we have 32. Okay, let's see, what part of the day did you have the most ticks? Between 1 to 3 p.m. Interesting. What were you doing between 1 to 3 p.m.? Oh, you were taking your, whatever, you were talking to your divorced husband between that time? All right, interesting, good to know. So they might provide homework, they might provide meditation, they might provide mostly behavioral, observational stuff. So it is very, very different the way how one therapist operates from another. And my hope is that you don't go to one, it doesn't work out, and you go, therapy isn't for me. I don't believe in that. I myself have gone to different medical doctors for things, whatever things, pain, like physical pain of sorts. And one guy see me and goes, no, you're good. There's nothing wrong with you. Get out of here. And then I went to another guy just to make sure. And he goes, no, man, there's definitely something wrong. Look, everyone's human. People miss things. It happens, right? Even robots, even computers, technical stuff, that has errors in and of itself as well. So we have to be careful. We have to be mindful that people make mistakes. And just because one thing doesn't work out, doesn't mean we should throw everything behind us. So if you and your friend are looking for a counselor, I hope that this video was able to bring you some information. I hope that this was knowledgeable, that you could take away something from this. And the hardest thing about going to counseling is going to counseling. It is. It absolutely is. But if you've already thought that, hey, I need a counselor, you got to pat yourself on the back because you're already one step forward. Because in your mind is, look, I could use some help on this. You're the guy who wants to go to the gym but has never done weightlifting and is going, look, I could use a personal trainer. Not so they're going to be with me forever, but just so they can help me get started. So keep those things in mind. Do a Google search, ask around. And my recommendation, reach out to a bunch. Reach out to a bunch, look at their specifications, think about your problem and what it is exactly, be very specific. And then start reaching out, talking to people, compare their prices to each other. And look, if you don't feel like paying $180 an hour is in your wallet, that's fine. I've seen counselors who charge $100, $90, $70, even $60 an hour. So it's definitely possible. Plus, you put insurance covering on that, it's definitely doable. So please, if you're thinking financially, Daniel, I would love therapy, I just can't afford it, I promise you there's a way around the financial thing. There are even volunteer counselors out there. Mind you, they don't have that, they might not have that educational background, so it's good to check, but there should be no reason that you say, look, I would love to go to counseling, I just can't afford to. There is a way. Even though it's hard, it's tricky, you might have to search for it, I promise you there's a way. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you were able to take some stuff away. Take care, folks, and stay safe. Bye-bye, everybody.